Hey, everybody, it's Brad.
And I'm Doug.
And this is the Doug and Brad Show. Two average, regular dudes, dads, on a mission of understanding and hopefully some solutions that we can offer up, or at least think together, group think together along the way. How you doing, bro?
Good, buddy. How are you this morning?
I could be better, honestly. The truth is, I just put $110 in my gas tank this morning. And I don't even have a big truck. It's an average sized truck. And yet my dollars aren't stretching so far anymore, bro. How's things north of the border?
Well, we're pushing $10 a gallon. So in I'm on the west coast of Canada.
Whoa.
So we're $2.20 a liter for gas here.
Oh my.
So you take that, and that's 4.3 liters to a gallon. That's pushing us just around, and that's regular fuel. So if you're going for premium fuel, and unfortunately my car takes premium fuel, I'm $2.46 a liter. So just let me do the math on that. It's $10.57 a gallon that I'm paying for gas in my car.
Man, I certainly hope you live close to the grocery store where you're paying 40 or 50% more.
Thank goodness I don't have far to travel, but I think of all these people that are commuting for work and every day, and I don't get it. So when we look at this inflation, and I'm just going to speak about Canada here for a second, because we're very close in incomes and disposable incomes than the States. So in Canada, there was a recent report issued that the average Canadian, 80% of Canadians had $200 to their name at the end of each month.
Whoa.
Okay.
That's scary, man. That's like mortgage failure scary.
Well, so I just got my mortgage renewal in the mail here the other day, and my mortgage payment is going up $700 a month.
Whoa.
So
whoa.
I phoned my bank that I've got my mortgage through, and I'm like, okay, what can we do here? I'm going to start shopping you, right? And they knocked it down a little bit, but it's still going to be $600 a month increase from what it was.
Where we live, that's an okay size house payment.
Well, exactly. So when I was talking to this lady at the bank, and she was great. She was probably one of the best people I've ever talked to. But like I was saying, man, you got a tough job right now. Like, how are you doing this? Because she's working with these families to try and do the best that she can, let's say. But like when we think that the average family, let's say, has this $200, and I'm sure that this resonates well with people, in the United States as well, right? And this is what's cool about what we're doing here is we got one guy in Canada and one guy in the States. So we've got this view kind of North America. But so you got $200 to your name. You've just had your mortgage increase anywhere between a few $100s. You got this $10 a liter gasoline. Plus you got milk, dairy, eggs, meat, you got everything else going up. I don't know how the average family is going to absorb this. Like like we're not the government. We just can't print money. Like my printer doesn't print money, unfortunately. I wish it did. So how is the average family? How are you watching this? Like, what are you doing to care for your family, through these difficult times? Because it is only going to get worse. Unfortunately, all the signs that we're seeing is this is going to continue to spiral out of control because money is effectively becoming worthless.
Yep.
What do you think, Brad?
Well, I think that this is being engineered. It makes no sense that day one of the Biden administration, they would shut down the construction of the Keystone Pipeline and then try to ramp up production elsewhere in the world. I mean, think about this for a second. Even if you just went from an ecological standpoint, because a lot of people are saying, well, it's good for the environment that we're not drilling. But the problem is we're drilling somewhere else in the world. So it's still the same amount of drilling, just not here. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So they basically kneecapped the energy industry, and they say, well, I've seen the press releases, and they say, well, we're still issuing permits and stuff. Well, people don't understand the way that the oil industry works, is that for them to invest in actually drilling in any spot, It takes years and millions of dollars in research before they actually do that. And the government has levels of approval. And while they may approve a broad spectrum here, those companies have to spend millions of dollars and many years researching and doing before they get to the next level where, oh, you got to get another permit. Well, we're not issuing those permits. Mm-hmm. So it's you're kind of being lied to your face about the permits. So because they say, well, you've got just as many permits as you do. Well, they're not saying about the different levels. So we're kneecapping the energy industry while the price continues to rise. Then they say, well, just buy an electric vehicle. Well, wait a minute. How many families can spend $60,000 on an electric vehicle? Okay,
it's over $100,000 to buy a Tesla here in Canada.
Okay, well then let's continue along that line. Okay, so you're supposed to go ahead and just leverage your soul and everything you have to get an EV car. Well, here's the other problem. Aren't you still going to have to pay for the electricity? Number one.
Exactly. You still require energy to create energy. Like an electric car isn't a source of energy.
And here's the other thing to that. People, they say, well, it's really, really good it's green. It's good for the environment. Well, wait a minute. Most electricity in the United States is still powered by coal. So they're still digging it out of the ground using fossil fuel machinery, all these gigantic machines to dig it out of the ground, bring it to an electric production facility, an electric power plant. Then they burn this coal, which that's a dirty process. And then after it's all said and done, you're ending up paying about the same amount. Maybe you'd save just a teeny weeny little bit, but now you've got a mortgage payment on this electric car. Plus, it's not that much better for the environment at all. It could even be worse in a lot of studies that I've seen. So you do that. So you handicap the energy industry. You tell everybody they got to buy an electric car. They could absolutely unchain these oil companies, even if they just said, okay, we screwed this up, because they have honestly said they want green energy. And you know what? The truth is, I actually do too. I really, really, really do. But we're just not ready for it. They took a window that should have taken like 25 years and said, okay, do it in 6 months. Well, and exactly. You just can't. And so
and the internal combustion engine. So when we look at vehicles, gas-powered vehicles, the technology exists that you can actually pump clean oxygen out of the exhaust pipe.
Oh, I know.
There are additives that you can add, and you can actually spray into the exhaust pipes that will turn that CO2 or that O2 into oxygen. So rather than investing into cleaning up an internal combustion engine, they're trying to get rid of it. The other thing too is if we look at the battery life of a electric vehicle, they're 8 to 10 years and they're done. You look at the lifespan of an internal combustion engine maintained properly, they can last 10, 20, 30 years. And the footprint of disposing of an internal combustion engine is so much better for the environment than a battery pack that's going to take tens of
lithium
thousands
ion. What are they going to do with these millions of tons of lithium ion that's spent up now? They're just going to put them in landfills? Is that the plan?
Exactly. So we're seeing an engineered takedown, let's say. Like, I don't know if you've been reading the reports, and I don't, I've been trying my best to sort of research and validate this, let's say, but there's reports circulating right now that there's 8 to 10 weeks of diesel oil and diesel exhaust fuel in supply reserves.
Well, I can actually speak to that, because
this is a big one.
Yeah, no, I can speak to that personally. My neighbor next door is a full-time truck driver, and he speaks with truck drivers all over. He has his own channels. I've got several friends who that's all they do. And it's funny because here in Wisconsin, I don't know why they say this. This is just a funny side note, but they don't say I drive a truck for a living. They say they drive truck.
Mm-hmm.
That's a funny thing.
That's just trucker talk.
I know, but he has told me that, and he's actually sent me screenshots all over the country of diesel pumps being empty and signs saying we're not getting any for the next few days. And even big companies like Flying J have told the drivers that come there that you better fill up here. if you live up north because you might not get back. And the
Right.
DEF, the exhaust fuel additive, he can't find it anywhere. I actually personally went and bought some from my tractor that requires it. And I went to 4 stores and then I found one. I
Yeah.
bought it.
So that's like, if we think of the ramifications on
If the
this,
food
I would
can't
say,
get to you, they truck the food to you. If the
well,
truck stop
nothing is
running,
going to move.
right?
Nothing is going to move.
Yeah.
I was sitting the other night just like thinking about the overall ramifications of the grinding halt that this creates. So not only do we shut down infrastructure as far as moving product around, but you think about even industrial, like everything from pulp mills to power plants to everything runs on diesel generators.
And it's all costing more.
Well, and not only is it costing more, but unable to maintain. So you're talking about fuel here in the fuel stations. I'm talking about oil and the pump lubricants, right?
Oh yeah.
So what's being reported is over the last 2 years, basically the mining operations haven't been working, and a lot of the companies that produce these chemicals and minerals to produce these products are in force majeure. They've gone bankrupt. So, we've got the fuel supply side, which is in short order on one thing, but then you've got the other side to it of, maintaining and keeping these engines running. You've got to do oil changes on these vehicles, often, right? Or you're going to blow your motor. The diesel pump lubricant, if you run out of a diesel pump lubricant, the sensor will go off, it'll shut your motor down, or it'll put you into limp mode, right? So you're running your truck at 5 miles an hour. So as a dad, right, and you and I are both dads that are providing for our families, it's like, wow, like
this is a recipe for disaster.
Right. So, we started off this episode talking about the financial crisis, which, and the overall inflationary side of things. But if there's one thing that I can say to somebody right now, is it's take some money and get some food in your house.
These are all tied together. See, all of these things are tied together. I mean, it seems like we may be going random, but when you look at them, they are all linked. Because if they can't get fuel to put in these trucks, then goods are not going to get to you. And if goods are not going to get to you, supply and demand says they're going to go through the roof cost-wise, whatever does get through. So then all of a sudden, that loaf of bread that you're used to paying 50 cents or $1 for now becomes $6.
Well, funny thing is, it says in the book of Revelation, and for anybody that's here watching that's read the book of Revelation, it says a loaf of bread will be a day's pay.
And boy, oh boy.
And like all of a sudden, when you've got 12 loaves of bread on the grocery store shelf and you've got 1,000 people lined up to buy that loaf of bread, what's the value going to be? It's
whatever you're willing to give, right?
Right. So when we saw the great toilet paper run at the beginning of the pandemic, right? Like remember Walmart and Costco? And I remember going to Costco at the beginning of the pandemic. And it's about a half-hour drive for me. I'd drive up there and I'd see the line, and the line would be 4 hours to get into Costco. I'd say, forget it. Like I'll go home and try again another day. But I mean, that was just on a scare. Like that's, because at the beginning of the pandemic, the shortage was driven by consumers over consuming. If you know what I'm saying, like nobody needed to have 4,000 rolls of toilet paper in their closet. So the demand, the supply didn't keep up with the demand, but there was still supply being created, if you know what I mean.
I do.
Whereas now we've got a complete opposite effect to it, where we do have high demand, but we've got no ability to create supply or move supply around. So when we looked at the beginning of the pandemic, let's say there was products still being produced. So even though that there were shortages, there were restocks.
Yep.
Right. So even though there was a panic state, you could still be a little bit comfortable knowing, okay, well, it's going to take a week or two or whatever to get these products back because they're still being made. We've just, saturated the supply system. Now we're talking about the end of the supply system. And even if a company can make products, getting those products to consumers, whether it's an online purchase or going to a brick and mortar or a Costco or a Walmart or anything, if Walmart can't get inventory, it can't sell you inventory. And, we're still seeing shortages over the last 2 years, but I mean, those are shortages due to a number of issues, but when we can't move product, I mean, it touches every piece of your life.
Well, and it's all tied right now to energy, because that's really what has driven both of our economies for decades. Energy. It's everything. The petrodollar, man. And so there's indicators everywhere that this is not going to get any better any soon, and people realize it. The average person, I think, realizes it. Around here. We're already beginning to see the sell-off of people's luxury items in a way that I have not seen ever. Like,
look at Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, boats you can pick up if you've got cash and you want a boat, you can get a nice boat real cheap right now, because they're everywhere. I mean, they're everywhere. ATVs, UTVs, everybody's selling off that stuff they just don't need.
Oh yeah, I've been looking at guitars, and it's just like, guitars that were $3,000. I see guys pushing them up for $500, and I'm just like, ooh,
I know.
Like it's sad. It's so sad to see, but now could be a good time to liquidate some of these items that we don't need, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And on the other side of it is taking that and converting that liquidation into stuff that we are going to need and being better prepared for that.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I kind of travel in circles of people that are like big brain financial people. We've got some friends that are in that group, and we kind of knew they were forecasting this quietly a year and a half, 2 years ago. Okay. So we had been squirreling away money as we got it. And now it seems like, boy, we were bracing for impact to make sure that we could just pay our mortgage. That was honestly it. It was like, okay, but if you had more disposable income, this could be one of those times of opportunity like nothing else. If you had the extra cash, or you had something that people are willing to trade for, you'll be able to pick up assets like pennies on the dollar. And that's what I think that this is part of the big problem is BlackRock, all these gigantic companies that are buying up properties. I think that this is part of some kind of an engineered plan.
Well, why do we see Gates and
dude? Yeah, I know it sounds conspiracy-ish, but how many conspiracies have we seen? Like, and I'm throwing up air quotes, conspiracies that we've seen that have come true in the last 5 years, and everybody thought, oh, that's ridiculous. It would never be like that. And then all of a sudden it turns out that it was truth. And now everybody hesitates to call something that just seems secretive a possible conspiracy. Well, what if it's real?
Why is Gates buying all the farmland?
Yeah, why is Bill Gates buying all the farmland? BlackRock, man, they're buying up this property, and I think it's because they see the decline, and they're able to pick up properties for pennies on a dollar. And you know what? Maybe it's not a conspiracy, and they're just good business people, but doing what they do for their investors. But I see it, if you had extra money, this is one of those opportunities that we're seeing the biggest flip of wealth that the world has seen in, I don't even know, maybe since Rome.
Yeah.
And so the question then is, how do you manage your way through this so that you have a home on the other side of it, and you have a place or an apartment or a place to live, and your family's taken care of? How do you, because as things get more expensive, we're going to have to reassess what's important. That's number one for me in my mind. For me, I'll answer it and then I'll shut up and let you talk. For me, it's keep your place of dwelling. And that's honestly my goal. That's my goal, because, where we live, there's hunting and fishing, and there's food that grows in our garden, and we have a garden, and we have a milk cow and chickens. And so I'm not worried about feeding my family and even friends if need be. But it's, at what point do you not have enough dollars to pay that mortgage, and somebody comes and says, well, we're going to buy it up for pennies on a dollar, and there's nothing you're going to do about it?
Yeah, it's scary. And then, like I say, in just trying to best prepare I'm going to say my household for my family, it's these decisions that need to be made, right? Like what goes, what stays, where do we put money, and do we put money as money, or do we start converting money into silver? But even with that, getting silver or gold or any tangible asset right now is even more difficult because it's all bought up. So right now, like if I wanted to go buy some silver, it would be 6 to 8 week waiting period before I could actually get my hands on some.
Is that real?
So,
For real?
yeah, it is. Well, where we're at, let's say if we were to go
Okay.
to one of the local dealers, right? Because
Okay.
everybody's kind of thinking the same thing. So for me right now, it's making sure that I've got an ample amount of food on hand. That's first and foremost, because like let's think worst case scenario, for instance. If the bank foreclosed on your house, you've got 12 months before they can actually kick you out. So, and I'm just thinking like
Worst case
hyper
scenario.
worst case, right?
Right.
If I missed my car payment, come and take it. Like whatever. I don't care about that. Not that I'm going to miss my payments, but you know what I'm saying? Like
Sure.
you're trying to think, I'm always trying to think worst case scenario. And part of that is the entrepreneurial side of my life that, I've had some wins, I've had some losses, we've had some good times, we've had some bad times, but once you've been kicked down a couple of times or you've been through a few situations, it makes you think a little bit differently about things and what's important and what's not important, right?
Oh
And
yeah, man. I can't tell you the amount of guitars that have come and gone in my house because it's like, oh, good times. All right, I can afford this nice blah blah blah. Bad times. Well, that gets sold first.
exactly. So the first thing we got to do is we've got to stop putting importance in stuff and don't let stuff define who you are, right? And I think for us as guys, we place so much ego, let's say, on our stuff, whether it's that fancy hot rod that you got in the garage, the boat, the guitars. Like we seem to develop a bit of identity about who we show up as, but that who we show up as is we as guys, trying to make ourselves look good. That who we show up as is a materialistic side of things, right? Like I got the bigger truck, I got the faster car, I got this, I got that kind of thing. And I think we really need as guys to let that go. And that doesn't matter. That can't be our definer, and we can't place our own personal value on stuff. We've got to switch the narrative in our head now to, okay, how do I really not focus on me, focus on, this kind of stuff, and how do I get ahead? Because as guys, we're always trying to scrape to the top too, right? It's just part of our nurturing nature of being a guy and taking care of the family and that kind of thing. But, like, okay, how do we really truly make that happen now of taking care of our family, making sure that we've got adequate stuff on supply, and making that more of our life mission than rather than having the fancy house and the fancy car? How do we have the best position that when crap hits the fan, we're kind of, okay, we're good for a bit. Like we don't have to go stand in the grocery store lineups for 6 hours for food. We've got a few months worth of food. We've got ability to make clean water. We've got, like right now, the necessities matter more than the toys. And that's hard to say. Like I'm a guy, I'm always clawing and fighting and, wanting to work towards the top. I'm an entrepreneur. For me, it's gas pedal down every day. It's seeing how far we can go. And it's so I don't want anybody to think I'm not preaching what I need to go through myself as well to make the changes in my family's life.
That's a good point. And I don't want to make what I'm getting ready to tell you guys into a commercial because I'm really not. But one of the things that we do for our family is we are freeze dried food consultants for a company called Thrive Life. And it's 30-year food. If you open it up, 30 years from now, it's still going to be fresh. And so people used to get on us. The reason why I'm bringing it up is people used to get on us and say, oh my gosh, that stuff is so expensive. And that was like 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Now it's not so expensive. When you look at how the inflation has risen, it's actually cheaper now than it was when we bought it a few years ago. And so if I just hold on to that, what would that can of, dried ground beef, freeze dried ground beef, what would that sell for 10 years from now? Because it's still fresh as new. And
So are they
I
still
like to
able to
invest in
get?
things like I like to invest in things like that.
I think you should put a link to that below the video.
Well,
And
okay, I wasn't gonna, but if you're
no, but I think anything that we can bring to people that can provide positive benefit is good. So a quick question I've got for you on Thrive Life is, are they able to meet the demand and supply orders right now? Because a lot of the
yeah,
food companies right now, we go to Patriot Food Supply, we go to a
yep.
lot of these different
And there you can't get it. Yeah.
exactly. So is Thrive Life able to
I cannot believe it, but they are keeping up. And this is what happened. When COVID first hit, everybody freaked out. They bought everything that Thrive had. They were out. And for about 6 weeks, they didn't really have much of anything, because when anything came in, it was sold immediately. But what they did was they took all of the money they could get their hands on, and they bought 3 more freeze dryers that are the size of two semi buses, and they added 100 extra employees. And within another few weeks, they were keeping up. And I couldn't believe, I honestly can't believe it, because the demand now is so insanely high, but they still have food. Like, as a matter of fact, they're even having specials right now, which I'm like, why would, okay, I'm glad you're doing it. Don't get me wrong. But like, for a business person, everybody's buying whatever comes in. So why would you put stuff on 30% off? I mean, I'm glad they're doing it because they're helping a lot of people out, but I can't believe that they have it in stock, which they do. And they're putting things on sale, which that shocks me. But anyway,
I think, like I say, and I know we're not making an infomercial right now for Thrive Life. We're just talking here, and we're going to talk about other things on different episodes as these come up. But I think put a link down there, and if these guys have stock and they have inventory, I'll grab some as well.
I'm just feeling a little uncomfortable just because I don't want everybody to think that's what we planned on doing. The reason why
we're just talking here, and we're talking about inflation. We're talking about how do we best take care of our families.
That's it.
And you've brought an option here that's one that you're doing for your family and is good for families. I think these are important things to do. And
let's back up a little bit. The reason why I brought up the Thrive thing is just because of the shelf life. Mm-hmm. The shelf life. If you've only got, because a lot of people will say, well, I'm on a fixed income and that's out of my league. Well, here's what you need to do. Go get an extra bag of rice, just one. When you go to the grocery store, rice or beans or something canned that is going to last a while, because of one bag of rice, you may not like eating it. You may hate it after a while, but you'll still survive. And
exactly.
That's what
I've been doing.
That's exactly it, man. Look at those things that are going to have a shelf life and they're going to stay. That's what my point was, is that you can go get gigantic bags of beans, and that's a lot of protein in the right kind of legumes and beans that is still very cheap and still available in a lot of places. The prices are going up. I mean, I've seen 50% jumps are not uncommon. A bag of beans that used to be $1, now it's $1.50. But
rice, we're $9 a bag for rice up here now. For just an Uncle Ben's converted bag of, what is it, 3.5 or whatever.
Are you kidding me?
It's $9. But I try to grab a bag every time I go to the grocery store, and then I just break it up and I vacuum pack. Well, but it's just the little things that matter, right?
Well, here's a little tip too. Like, if you got some mason jars, the regular canning mason jars, you can put rice or beans in those mason jars. And what's the company? They have a Food Saver, the vacuum sealer company. They make an attachment that goes straight on the top of that thing where you can put your lid in there and it will vacuum seal directly into that glass jar. That's one cool thing, because then it's going to last a lot better and longer. And there's all kinds of foods that can go in those things. Yep. But here's the other thing. You say, well, I don't have a Food Saver machine. Well, my husband happens to be into cars. You can use a brake bleeder. The pump hand brake bleeders. I've done it. We've made videos on it. And that way it's either free or $5, from an
Right.
automotive store, and you can hook that thing right onto the top of the food saver. But yeah, Doug, your point is well taken. Is we need to be thinking necessities of life first. Forget about the toys right now. Just how are we going to get through the next 2 years? That's what we got to be thinking.
Well, and what we need is good, clean water, right? It's number
Absolutely.
one, clean water. So having some form of purifying or keeping, your water. So, if we look at it in an automobile, right? An internal combustion engine needs fuel, oxygen, and spark,
Yep.
right? And you got those three things, you can make pretty much anything run. So we need oxygen, water, and fuel as a human being to live, right? The nice thing is well, we'll get into chemtrails or that kind of, we'll get into the cleanliness of our oxygen one day.
Wow.
But at this moment, we're breathing, right?
Right.
Whether we can have all the discussion in the world about what we're breathing, but we're breathing.
Right.
Clean water, right? We need good, clean water. And then we don't need as much food as the average person thinks we need as well. And then that's another sort of aspect to it is the North American diet has suggested that you need to eat, 3 meals and snacks in between every day. If you look at ancient times, if you go back and you research the Roman empires, the British empires, these guys were big, muscular warriors. They all lived on 1 meal a day because there wasn't enough food to go around and feed those armies. So they weren't going out in battle and eating steak and chicken and hamburgers after a battle. They were coming back and having scraps. So,
Hardtack.
Exactly. So we need to flush a lot of what we've been taught about food and diet and get back to the basics of what is survival, right? So air, water, and enough food to keep the body operating as compared to what is keeping the body full and lethargic, let's say. So, we can get away with 1 meal a day, one properly planned meal. So when we look at what can somebody afford, let's say, for having food away, if you change that mindset to say, okay, I got to have enough food for breakfast, lunch, dinner, bedtime snack, whatever, or if I just have to have one good meal per day, you're talking about Thrive Life a couple minutes ago or whatever we're putting away. If you change the narrative in your head on surviving versus thriving, right, then all of a sudden surviving becomes a much more affordable option than thriving.
Right. Well, and this is what we're talking about is inflation is going to cripple a lot of people. And so surviving is the main focus right now, unless you're a gazillionaire. And if you're a gazillionaire, it didn't matter anyway. But
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, it's not going to affect them,
Well, it is, because when things stop moving, right? It doesn't matter if you've got $5 in the bank or $50 million in the bank. If you can't get food, you can't get fuel, you can't get gas into your house, we're all crippled by the same challenge, right?
Yeah.
And if you've got a 50,000 square foot house down in Florida that you're needing to run, 10 air conditioners and natural gas and everything to run it, I'd actually rather in this state be the little guy that has a very small footprint, because I can navigate and make changes much quicker than somebody that has a massive footprint of trying to maintain on a daily basis.
That's interesting. We have been, I believe, 100% guided by God to live where we are living. And I mean that in 100% sincerity, because we just kind of were rolling with the changes that life brought at us. We have a special needs daughter named Grace. And when we were living in Ohio, we started learning how to produce our own food and food for her. We had a little goat, a milk goat, and she was eating that because she eats through a G tube. And we started growing foods that were raw and grinding them up and putting them into a custom made liquid that she would pump into her body because she used to get sick a lot. She used to get sick and go to All Children's Hospital for aspiration pneumonia at least 4 times a year. And it was always scary. But when we switched her over to raw foods, she stopped getting sick. Never went to the hospital again for that. But then we got a small milk cow, and somebody must have ratted it out to zoning and said, hey, they got a cow in their backyard. Even though it was a little one, there's like a 500-pound, 400-pound cow. They changed the rules and said, okay, you can't have that anymore, even though it was considered a pet and all that, blah, blah, blah. Well, we ended up in Wisconsin, and we learned more and more how to grow, and we were surrounded by farmers, and we're surrounded by people who know what the heck they're talking about. And we were guided here. But I also believe that for times like this is going to be the kind of thing that's a safe haven. And I'm saying this, that if you have the ability to get away from gigantically populated centers, I would definitely do that. If you have the means to get out, I would. Because excuse me, when people get hungry, they do stupid things. It's just that simple. And I don't care how good your police department is. When their families get hungry, they're going to do stupid things too.
Well, and we're going to see, like, we're going to have to be into more of a protectionary mode here going forward as well, because you're right. Like, we're going to see crime increase. We're going to see break and enters increase. We're going to see, as society crumbles from desperation. And the unfortunate thing is we're going to see good people
do bad
things, and not because they want to, but like when you're mama bear or your papa bear looking after your family, unfortunately, you're going to do what you need to do that, right? Yeah. So we need to make sure that as guys and as dads, and our role as a father and a husband and a grandfather, and is to protect and take care of our families. And it's going to get very interesting coming up here, as the screws are put to people, and people are finding themselves in a desperate situation. So let's continue to encourage in what we're doing and bring solutions to the people that are watching this. And please like the channel and follow, and we want to be engaged with anybody that's watching this with us, that this is a discussion. We're not forcing our opinions or thoughts down anybody's throat. We're just trying to have a discussion and learn, learn from us. We learn from you, and just bringing something positive to the scenario as well.
Yeah. And as we round out the conversation for today, one solution, I've got 2 solutions to suggest. Again, with the rice and beans, just if you got an extra couple bucks, get something and just start putting things away. If you have the means to do more, do more. Start with the things that are going to be shelf stable, that are going to last a long time, and you can set them over there. But also learn how to store them, because you don't want bugs getting into the rice that you just paid all this money for, and now it's either going to be disgusting or not edible at all. That's the first thing. Second thing is look around your area for different food pantries, because there's a lot of them. Around us, there's one called Ruby's Pantry. And what it is they get food from gigantic store chains that's about to expire or just did, and it's still legal to distribute it. So they get these semi-truckloads full of food, and you show up with a laundry basket, and for $10 or $15, they fill it up. I mean, overflowing with all kinds of food. Now, that might be a solution for some of you looking around, the name of ours is Ruby's Pantry, and they have a few of them. So, but look for those things, because the sad part about this is there are millions of tons of food that are thrown away in the United States every year that just came off of a grocery store shelf. Mm-hmm. And so look for those outlets, because they do exist.
Yeah, there is options, and let's continue as we go forward here, looking at these different options. And just providing as much knowledge as we can to help people, A, save money, and then B,
Get
keep
through
food
it.
on the table for their families.
Get through it. We're in this together, folks. So that's it, man. That's the show for today. So I hope it's encouraging. I hope that it's a blessing, and hope it motivates you to get up and get moving. Because unfortunately, I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
So here's just a quick leaving. One of the things that you and I were talking about yesterday was the red green show.
Oh, I love red green show.
What we got to come up with here is their tagline is, if the women didn't find you handsome, at least they'll find you candy, right? So
Yeah.
we got to come up with something along that with, and I'm just spitballing here. If the women don't find you rich, at least they'll find you providing. I don't know. I guess we'll think about something.
We're gonna have to whittle on that one. Maybe
Totally.
You guys out there come up with a suggestion. If we've got a good one, we'll use it. But
Exactly.
so that's it, man. So thank you. Thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell so that you get all the notifications, and we'll see you next time. So I'm Brad.
I'm Doug.
You guys have an awesome day. Bye.